Welcome to day 9 of the virtual Northeast Ohio Youth Football Summit. My name is Daryl Taylor, Youth Football Director for your Cleveland Browns. Today we have the honor and privilege to have Coach Nate Moore with us, who will lead a discussion on offensive line play at the youth level. Coach Moore is the head ball coach at Washington High School, Massillon Tigers. Coach Moore played college football at the University of Dayton. He has also held head coaching positions at two other programs, Minster High School 2010 through 2012, Cincinnati LaSalle High School 2013 to 14, where he won a state championship, and his current position as head ball coach of the Massillon Tigers. And in 2019, he had an undefeated regular season, and they were state final runner-ups. As we have seen over the past 2 weeks, offensive line play is pivotal to the effectiveness of any offense. Coach Moore, a former offensive lineman and a great teacher, will give us valuable insight on offensive line play today. During the presentation, please send us any questions using the Q&A portal below. Coach Moore will have time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts on social media using hashtag NEO Summit and tag our youth football Twitter and Facebook pages at Browns Youth FB. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Coach Moore. Take it away, Coach.
Thanks, Daryl. And I do want to thank you personally and thank Cleveland Browns for everything that you guys are doing to support high school football and youth football in Northeast Ohio. I can't imagine that there's many other ball clubs that are doing as much as you guys are doing to support the coaches in their area. So many thanks to you guys. I am going to talk about offensive line fundamentals at the youth level. How I wanted to approach this talk was to talk to all the coaches out there as if you guys were our youth coaches in our program. And one of the things that we do in our youth football program is we break every position down and create benchmarks that we want our youth coaches to meet by the time that their players get to us in our high school program. And so these are position specific, technique specific, all the things that our position coaches, when that young offensive lineman graduates from youth football and comes into our program, that they should, if not mastered, all of these topics, all these techniques, if not mastered, at least been heavily exposed to. And I think it's a big help for the youth coaches. Instead of, you trying to figure out either so how do I prepare my offensive lineman to be able to perform at the high school level, or, having to guess, okay, so maybe I've taken some time and I've tried to develop as an offensive line coach, but how do I decide what techniques or where my focus should lie as I'm preparing my guys? So our benchmarks are really a guide for our youth coaches. Provide them with some structure and some knowledge base as far as these are the things that are important to us when your players get to the high school level. So the topics that we're going to talk about specifically in this talk when it comes to offensive linemen and offensive line play is the proper staggered stance, a 4 to 6 inch zone step and gap step, base blocking using a 2-hand punch on the second step, understanding aim points in the run game, 2 pass protection topics, being able to mirror with a proper stagger, and then being able to kick on a 45-degree angle. And the final one is really an effort topic as much as anything else, which is finish blocks to the whistle. So those are the things that are important to us for our youth coaches that are coaching our youth offensive linemen to hit on every day in practice, right? These should be involved in their everyday drills. And as they come up through 3rd to 4th to 5th to 6th grade, they should be working towards mastery on these topics. So the first topic, proper staggered stance. All right, so when we're talking about a proper staggered stance, here are the keys. All right, so here are your coaching points. All right, number one, we want the feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Okay, you don't want to be too wide in your stance. You also don't want to be too narrow. Okay, so I would take the kids when they're first starting out and have them stand with their feet shoulder width apart, and then have them move them out just a little bit, right, to get slightly wider than shoulder width apart. We're looking for a toe-to-heel relationship with the dominant foot back. Okay, so how we would start those guys is if they're a right-handed. When they're in school, if they write with their right hand, right? If they're right-handed, then we're going to start them off in a right-handed stance, independent of what side of the ball that they're on. If they're left-handed, then we're going to start them off in a left-handed stance. And then as they move through 3rd to 4th grade and into 5th grade, we'll start working on being able to get in a stance with our right and our left hand. But we start them off in just their dominant hand. Okay, but heel to toe relationship with the dominant foot back. So if I'm right-handed, my right hand is down and my right foot is back. All right, and vice versa with the left hand. If I'm left-handed, my left hand is down, my left foot is back. Okay, and we're looking for a toe to heel relationship. So your toes of your right foot that is back should align with the heel of your left foot that is up. All right, so from that position, okay, so you've started them off, that they're standing up with their feet shoulder width apart. You widen them out a little bit, all right, so they're slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Get them in that heel to toe relationship with the dominant foot back. All right, now you're going to want to crouch them into a deep athletic stance, okay? We all probably know what we're talking about with your athletic stance, all right? We're talking about a linebacker pre-snap, right? Bend at the knees, bend at the hips, shoulders back, big chest. All right, so we want them to crouch into a deep athletic stance. Okay, so deeper than a linebacker would stand. All right, hips down, knees bent, big chest. All right. From that position, now we're going to have them drop their dominant hand into the ground about where their eyeball would fall out. And that terminology actually comes from the coach that I played for in college at the University of Dayton. And I think it's something that's easy for kids to remember. All right, so that they're crouched down, their dominant foot's back, they've got that heel to toe relationship. All right, and as they get in that deep crouch, right, just if your eyeball were to fall out, that's about where your hand would go. All right, and so then they drop the dominant hand into the ground. All right, and they're going to go from that deep athletic stance crouch, all right, to just basically being in the same position, but just a little bit lower with my hand down. All right, and that hand position should put them in a nice balanced stance. Okay, we want them to be balanced right to left. We want them to be balanced front to back. All right. If they pick their hand up, all right, so here's a test for you. If I'm in a good balanced stance, at least front to back, all right, I've got my dominant hand down, I'm in my stance. If I pick my hand up, I should slowly fall forward. Okay, if I pick my hand up and I go down right now, right, I fall on my face mask right now, then I've got too much weight forward. And if I pick my hand up and I don't go anywhere, I've got too much weight back. Okay, so I should pick my dominant hand up and I should slowly fall forward. Okay. So those are the things we talk about with a proper staggered stance. And that's really where, in all positions of football, everything starts from the stance. You can't overlook this. If you're, maybe you're a sixth grade youth coach, you think, well, my kids have got it. Maybe you moved up with them from third grade. You still need to stay on them about the stance. Everything starts with the proper stance. The next benchmark that we want our offensive linemen to be able to develop in youth football is being able to take 4 to 6 inch zone and gap steps, right? And along with that is understanding the zone and gap terminology. Okay, so very simply, zone, when we're talking about a zone step, all right, that's a step that is to the call, okay? So however you determine where the call of the play is, right? Whether it is you're saying zone right or you're saying zone left, or zebra is zone right and zipper is zone left, right? However you communicate that, all right, with a zone step, then you're stepping to the call. And if the call is right, then you're stepping with your right foot. If the call is left, you're stepping with your left foot, right? And really globally with all your kids, I think that's a really important basic concept, right? When you get to the roots of playing football, really any position, all right? There's a very, very small amount of exceptions to this rule. But if you're going right in any position, you should be stepping right with your right foot. If you're moving left, you should be stepping left. All right. So you step with the correct foot in the direction that you're going. That's something that if you get that taught, even just that basic thing to all of your youth players, so I think you're doing a good thing. All right. But so zone is to the call. All right. If it's zone right, I step with my right foot first. If it's zone left, I step with my left foot first. Okay. And then gap. All right. When we talk about gaps, and so I'll say this in case anybody's unfamiliar. Zone. Okay. So a zone scheme is basically the basic rule of that scheme is everybody's responsible to the zone. All right. Or the gap, A gap, B gap, C gap. Right, to the call, right? So if I'm a right guard and it's zone right, I'm B gap responsible. And I'm going to step with my right foot. And then in a gap scheme, you're responsible for the gap away from the call. Okay, so if it is a gap scheme to the right, okay, like a power play, right, where the fullback's kicking out and we're pulling the backside guard, everybody blocks down. Okay, it's power right. But everybody on the front side is responsible for the gap to their left. Okay, so in gap, you're away from the call. All right, but that basic premise of what foot you step with still holds true. All right, so if it's gap, I'm stepping away from the call. But if I'm stepping left, I step with my left foot first. My first step comes with my left foot. All right, if I'm stepping right, then my first step is with my right foot. Okay, so we want the kids to understand the difference between zone and gap. All right, and then we want them to understand about taking those steps. Okay, so from your stance, so we've already talked about stance. Okay, but from your stance, you should be able to take your first step and still remain in relatively the same position. Okay, so the number one thing that probably players at all levels do wrong, if you're talking about the first step, besides maybe overextending, all right, is popping up, right? Is they take their first step, right, and they're in their stance and their chest is down, right? They're leading with their shoulder pads, and they take their first step. Sorry about that. They take their first step, and their pads come up, right? They expose their chest to the defensive lineman. We want them to take that first step with their shoulder pads still down in a good hitting position. okay? So what we want them to be able to do, and what we talk to them about is you should be, when you take that first step, you should be in pretty much the same position as you were in your stance. All right, you should not be popping up. You should be still in that deep, crouched, athletic position. And if you take a look at the picture that I posted here, I think that's what you're seeing here at a number 65. He's taking his first step. All right, whether it's zone or gap, really doesn't matter. But he's still in that crouched, athletic position. He's still got his shoulder pads down. All right, he's not popping up and exposing his chest. So that's a key point. If you can get that taught to your youth offensive linemen about the difference between zone and gap, stepping with the correct foot, and keeping their shoulder pads down, I think you're doing a great job. Another key coaching point that we talk about is force through the ground. All right, and so a little bit maybe more simply is push, don't reach. So when you're taking your first step, you're taking these 4 to 6 inch zone and gap steps. All right. Sometimes young guys and older guys too, they have a tendency to reach with the foot they're stepping with as opposed to pushing off the opposite foot. Okay. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about force through the ground. So if I'm stepping to the right, I'm going to take my 4 to 6 inch zone step to the right. All right. And that step happens because I've pushed off of my left foot, right? That step doesn't happen because I'm reaching with my right foot, right? I want to bring my hips and my shoulder pads with me. So I'm pushing off my left foot. Okay, so that's a key point that we want to get taught. Quickness is key. All right, you definitely want to design drills, right? As the kids are moving up through 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, right? Where you're starting to focus on quickness of that first step. Keeping feet tight to the ground. All right, I think you see that in this picture here too. All right, you don't want that first step, or really any steps, all right, where your feet are coming significantly up off the ground, right? You want, when we talk about feet tight to the ground, we're meaning that our cleats are barely grazing the top of the turf or the top of the grass, right? As we take our steps, we're not taking big lumbering steps with our feet far away from the ground. We want to keep those feet tight to the ground. And so you can, when you're designing drills, you can use a line, you can use a board to step over, all right, as you're training your guys to take those 4 to 6 inch zone and gap steps, all right? But you should remain in basically the same position as you were in your stance, right? As you're taking that step, concentrate on force through the ground, all right? Push, don't reach. As they get those things down, start training for quickness, all right? Keep the feet tight to the ground, key coaching point, all right? And use lines and boards as you're designing those drills. Okay, so when we get into base blocking, all right, the next benchmark that we really want to see, all right, is an offensive lineman able to complete a base block using a two-hand punch. Okay, as we're designing drills, all right, for teaching and enforcing these coaching points, all right, we'll use hand shields. Okay, where we've got another player holding a blocking shield, but you can also use stand-up blocking dummies or sleds if you have access to a sled. All right, so all those are great tools, and you're going to build off of your first step drill. Okay, so you're going to build some drills where you're working on your first step with the right foot, first step with the left foot, right, keeping those shoulder pads down, force through the ground. All right, and so this drill should really be, and enforcing this technique should really be the next progression off of the first step. Okay, so now you're going to design drills, all right, where they're working through the second step. All right, and the key to being able to punch, all right, a proper base block, right, with the two-handed punch, all right, is getting your second step into the ground on contact, all right? And that's terminology that goes back to the beginning days of the legalization of blocking with your hands, at least. But really, second step in the ground on contact, whether you're flipper or shoulder blocking. So really, that goes back to the beginning of football. All right, getting your second step in the ground on contact. Okay, so you should be working that first step, forced it through the ground, getting that second step in the ground, then, all right, and creating that two-hand punch contact as that second step is connecting it into the ground. All right, it should also be a 4 to 6 inch step. All right, we're still looking for 4 to 6 inch step. All right, and we're looking for a two-hand punch on contact. Okay, so maybe you're carrying your first step drills, right, into a two-hand punch on the second step in some board drills. All right, but however you're choosing to teach this technique, all right, within your program, the key point, all right, is two-hand punch, second step in the ground, all right, and make sure that the two-hand punch is on contact. The next point that we want our youth offensive linemen to be able to understand is aim points in the run game, right? And to be honest, we get guys sometimes at our level where it takes them, till their junior or senior year before they really understand this. And I think if you can ensure that all of your youth offensive linemen understand aim points, they're going to be advanced compared to a lot of the other kids playing offensive line, especially if you're sending them on into 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, understanding aim points in the run game. I think they're going to be at a tremendous advantage. Okay, so aim points. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to determine based off of your scheme where your aim points are. Okay, so if you're talking a zone scheme, all right, or a gap scheme, right, you're going to have different aim points. All right, if you are, a wing T team, right, where you're using mostly man blocking schemes, right, where you're pulling people, you're going to have different aim points. All right, if you're an outside zone team versus an inside zone team, you're going to have different aim points. So you have to determine where your aim points are based off of your scheme. And if you don't want to guess, right? You can certainly do some research online. There's lots of incredible resources out there, and you can get into that Glacier Vault, right, and figure some things out as far as aim points. But probably the best thing that you can do is get on the phone or take a visit to your varsity offensive line coach and talk to him about, so what are the aim points, right, on every run scheme that we have for every position, because it's going to be different based off of position. All right, but you have to determine where your aim points are. All right, example. All right, the front side tackle and inside zone. All right, where's his aim point? Okay, for us, he's an inside shoulder aim point. Okay, so if we're running inside zone and our front side tackle is too wide in his aim point, and that defensive end crosses his face, right, we could be in big trouble, right? And certainly there's other blocking schemes where if his aim point is too far inside, right? If we're running an outside zone, right, and his aim point is too far inside, right? Our back's aim point is the outside leg of the tight end or ghost tight end, and our tackle is too far inside, right, on the defensive end, we're going to be in trouble there too. All right, so it's very important that your guys understand their aim points. All right. Terminology that you want to use. I mean, you should be using the terminology that your varsity coach uses. If you've got to create that yourself, you could simply talk about an inside shoulder aim point or a sternum aim point, which would be down the middle, or an outside shoulder aim point. Okay, but it's important that you get that defined for your players and then taught. You need to think about first and second level aim points. Okay, so on the same play, there may be different aim points if you are blocking a down lineman versus a certain front, versus if you're climbing to the second level for a linebacker against a different front. Okay, so you've got to know where all of your first and second level aim points are, right, based off of the scheme. And then you need to establish what your double team aim points are. Right, if you're running at schemes where you've got double teams involved, which most of you probably do. Right, what are your aim points? Right, I hope you're not just telling, okay, you two block this guy. Okay, what are your aim points? Okay, establish those. And you can add this to your drills as you're building off of your drills that you're going to do to teach the first step, right? And then the drills that you're going to build off of that for the two-handed punch on contact on the second step, right? And then you can start talking about aim points, right? As you're working the two-step two-handed punch, right? If my tackles, we're working inside zone, right? And we've got an inside shoulder aim point. Right, so you can add that in and start talking to your kids about aim points as you're working through your technique drills. All right, and so you can reinforce those aim points when you're doing scheme work with your offensive line. All right, when you're doing walkthroughs. All right, especially walkthroughs. I mean, certainly if you're doing a walk, do not allow your offensive line to just walk. Just tag up a guy. All right, make sure that they are focused in on and concentrating on aim points and their other techniques. Make sure they're doing those things right, even though it's a walkthrough. All right, and any half line drills that you're doing. All right, but where you're attempting to contact the defender or the aim point, all right, is of the utmost importance. And in that executing your block properly, and in maintaining the block, right? If you've got guys that, they get off the ball and they strike, right, and they hit the right guy, but are unable to maintain the block properly, right? It very much could be an aim point problem. All right, so getting your guys straight with that, I think will give you guys a tremendous advantage as you're moving these guys up to the varsity level. Okay, we'll talk about a couple pass protection benchmarks. Okay, the first one is teaching your youth offensive linemen to be able to mirror with a stagger. Okay, if you check out the bottom here of this slide, all right, I think everybody's probably familiar with mirror dodge. All right, that's a very, very basic football movement drill. All right, where you have one player that's moving back and forth between two cones, and he can kind of go wherever he wants, right? And then you have another player opposite him, right, who's trying to maintain proper posture, and is trying to move with that person, right? Move with that defender that's moving wherever he wants to go. All right, so that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And you can certainly use a drill like that to be able to reinforce and teach being able to mirror with the stagger. Okay, so we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to mirror the defender while maintaining our proper stagger with our feet. So if I'm a right tackle, or right guard, or right side guy, right, I maintain my right foot being back and my left foot being up. All right, if I'm a left side guy, I can mirror the defender with my right foot up and my left foot back. Okay, And then I want to maintain an inside leverage on that defender. Okay. So as we mirror, right, when you're just doing it as a general football conditioning drill, or as a station in some conditioning stations, right, you're probably telling the kid to be nose to nose on that guy. Try to maintain a nose to nose relationship. All right. But when we're talking about working on pass protection with your youth offensive lineman, all right, and we want to teach them to mirror with the stagger. We want to mirror on the inside half of that man. Okay. Specifically the inside number of the defensive lineman. Okay. The defensive lineman, all right, at the start of the drill, so you've got your two cones. You've got an offensive guy and a defensive guy. All right. Your defensive lineman, he could be in a 2-point stance. That's fine. Doesn't need to get down in a 3-point stance. All right. And we would start our offensive lineman up, all right, in a 2-point stagger, all right, as if they already set out of their stance, all right, and lined up on the inside number of that defensive lineman, okay, with their 2-point stagger, all right. On the whistle, all right, you're going to give your defensive lineman free rein to move back and forth between the two cones on his side of the line, all right? And at no point should the defensive lineman cross the line. At no point should the offensive lineman cross the line. This is a non-contact drill, all right? The offensive lineman is going to shuffle, staying on the inside number of the defensive lineman, maintaining staggered feet, all right, and maintaining good width in his stance, all right? He should still be slightly wider than shoulder width apart. We don't want to be too wide. We certainly don't want to be too narrow, all right? But instituting your mirror dodge drill with these offensive line specific components will definitely get your offensive line moving in the right direction towards developing their ability to mirror a defender while maintaining inside presence and the proper stagger, which will make your varsity coach's job a lot easier as he's getting into some more details in terms of pass protection. The next benchmark with pass protection that we would like our youth offensive line coaches to concentrate on and work on with our guys that are coming up is being able to execute a 45-degree kick slide. Okay, so your basic pass protection kick slide, right, on a 45-degree angle. All right, and so in our mind, this builds off of the mirrored drill. All right, so I mean, it's very possible that in 3rd and 4th grade, that the mirror drill is what you're concentrating on, right? That's the benchmark that we're primarily concerned about, right? And then as they're entering 5th grade, right, once they've mastered the mirror drill, all right, then you can move on. You're still going to work that mirror drill, but you can start working also your 45-degree kick slide. All right, so we are working on, all right, setting on that 45-degree angle. All right, once again, all right, when we talked about the first step in the run game, right, our zone and gap steps, we talked about force through the ground, right, push, don't reach. All right, we want to do the same thing as we're working our kick slide. All right, especially on the first step. Okay, and we say kick slide. Really, and I think in a perfect world, we find a different word other than kick, because to me, when you think kick slide, you really think about kicking that lead foot out and reaching. All right, and when you reach, you're not going to be on balance. All right, and you're not going to produce the same amount of power. You're not going to be able to get you're not going to be able to cover as much ground. All right. You feel like you will, but you won't. All right. So it's very important that we push off of our inside foot. All right. Force through the ground, push off our inside foot, right? Using the muscles in that inside leg through the ground, right? And that is what's going to create the force necessary to move us, right, back and away on the proper angle. All right. So you don't want them to kick and reach, right? You want them to push. All right. And then you want to kick to the spot. All right. And I do have to reference at this time, if you are really interested in learning about offensive line play in general, but about pass protection especially, check out Paul Alexander, former NFL offensive line coach. You can follow him on Twitter. He's got podcasts out there, all kinds of stuff. But I've been teaching the spot, right, setting to a spot since probably 2007 when I heard Paul talk about it at the Cool Clinic in Cincinnati. And if you haven't been to the Cool Clinic in Cincinnati, it's the greatest offensive line clinic in the world. That's definitely worth checking out as well. But so we're going to kick to the spot, right? And the spot is the point of intersection between the defender and the quarterback, all right? So the spot can change, right, depending on the drop of the quarterback. All right, the spot can change depending on the alignment of the defensive lineman, right? How wide is he? How tight is he? All right, but we're going to set to that spot, right? That is on the point of intersection. All right, so if you check out, below the notes here, all right, we have our offensive lineman, our defensive lineman, and our quarterback. All right, so we're just going to draw a line between the defensive lineman, right? And let's say this is a defensive end and a tackle. Draw a line through to the high shoulder of the quarterback, right, where he's going to be rushing, right? And then we're going to take another line, and we're going to draw it on a 45-degree angle, and where those two lines intersect, that's the spot, okay? So to be an effective pass protector, right, I have to beat the defender to that spot, okay? Meaning I have to be there covering that spot with my body, right, with the proper balance, right, with the proper body position, right, with the proper hand position, with the ability to strike, right? And if I'm on that spot before the defender is, right, and I'm imbalanced and I've got the proper body position, right, that's a rep that I'm going to win. Okay. So that's the key point, right? And so how many kicks do you take in that slide to the spot, right? Do you take one kick? Do you take two kicks? You take three kicks, right? Well, it's all dependent on where the spot is in relationship to where you're starting, right? So how far you are away from the spot is going to tell you that. All right. Once again, maintain proper balance through the kick slide, right? Force through the ground, shoulders square to the line of scrimmage. Okay. Cardinal sin and probably most often violated rule or technique is for guys, especially tackles. All right, but guards do it too. Centers do it too. People do it, is they open up in pass protection, right? And they turn their shoulders to the defender, right? It's of utmost importance, right, that you teach your young offensive linemen on their 45-degree kick slide that they're sliding with their shoulders squared to the line of scrimmage, right? I'm going to set to the inside number of the defender. Okay, especially if I'm a tackle. All right. I am a proponent at the high school level of setting a little bit wider with the guards. But I don't know that that's necessary at the youth level unless you really think that your guys can handle that. But you can get into setting a little wider with your inside guys and really at center. I think everything should be nose to nose for the center. All right, everything's essentially a power set for him. All right, but so unless he's in slide protection, I guess. All right, but so maintain proper balance, right? Utmost importance, right? And that really comes from pushing and not reaching. Shoulders square, inside number of the defender. All right, and then punch at the last possible moment. All right, you have to have a punch. All right, you have to stop the charge of the defender. All right, so you have to work that in. All right, but you want to wait till the last possible moment. All right, you don't want to punch early, right, and get your momentum going forward, get your head coming down, get your shoulders coming down. All right, punch at the last possible moment. But if you can get your 5th and 6th graders, all right, to be able to kick slide on a 45-degree angle to the spot and understand spot terminology, right, and have them doing that while pushing and not reaching, with proper balance and their shoulders square on the inside number of the defender, you're going to have an extremely happy varsity offensive line coach. And then the last benchmark for us with our youth offensive linemen is finish blocks to the whistle. All right, we want to start to develop a standard of excellence with the effort with which we play, which I think is the hallmark of any great offensive line. We want to start developing that as early as possible, right? So we want our guys to finish blocks to the whistle, all right? And how do you get guys to finish blocks to the whistle, especially, how do you get them to finish blocks to the whistle in the games, right? Well, it has to be more than just, tell them, right, we're going to finish blocks to the whistle, right? You can't just do that. You've got to enforce that all the time in everything that you do, right? In your preseason conditioning that's probably coming up here soon in July, right? Do you enforce that your players finish through the whistle or finish through the line, right? Whatever. Well, first of all, there should be a starting point and an ending point of every drill that you do, right? It shouldn't be, right, you're doing the bag drill and then, they just get back in the back of the line, right? There should be a cone, or there should be a line that signifies that drill is done, right? And then you have to enforce, right, that maximum effort is exerted during that drill from the first point to the last point. And if it's not, you have to correct it, right? And so that has to start in your youth football conditioning coming up here in July, right? And then that's got to carry over into your drills that you do with your offensive linemen in practice, right? Finishing through the whistle, right? And if you establish that mode of behavior in conditioning, and then you carry that over to how you practice, you're going to see that show up in the film, right? On I think probably most of you guys play on Saturday, right? You're going to see that. You're going to see that in the film, right? But it's not yelling and screaming at them, right? It's not, I told you guys what the expectations were, right? As far as, just wanting to get mad at them for not blocking to the whistle during the game, right? No, like you have to start establishing that from the very first time that you guys are together in summer conditioning, right? With every drill that you do, all right? And if you do that with your guys in your youth program over the course of their 3rd grade year, their 4th grade year, their 5th grade year, their 6th grade year, right? And you can take the rest of these benchmarks that we talked about, right, and really work on, narrow your field of vision, right? These are your goals. These are your benchmarks. And if you can get these things developed in your guys, like I said, you're going to have a very, very happy offensive line coach And he's going to get, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys every year that he can play on Friday night. And he can get a little bit more in depth on some technique with them because you did a great job when you had him at the youth level. That's the presentation. Love to take any questions. It's great to be here with you guys. And once again, thanks, Daryl, and thank you to the Browns.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Coach. Really appreciate your presentation. Did a phenomenal job. Great information for us all to take and apply to our offensive line play, especially at the youth level. We had a couple questions that come through that we'll send to you right now. First question was, at the youth level, should O-line be in a 2-point stance and pass pro or 3-point stance?
Yeah, so I think with that question, I think the first thing you do is you go to your varsity offensive line coach and ask him what he prefers. As far as us, we are a 3-point stance team. It's been rare that we've ever allowed anybody to go in a 2-point stance. If you're interested, there's certain people. There are people that believe in that 2-point stance stuff, right? And there's players that believe in it. If you're an offensive line guy that really likes to get in the weeds with this stuff, check out Charles Bentley and what he's talked about with the 2-point stance versus the 3-point stance. And I know he believes that you are actually, because of the momentum generated through your offhand coming out of your stance, that you can actually get to the proper position faster from a 3-point stance than a 2-point stance. But all those things are debatable till the cows come home. I would ask your varsity offensive line coach what he prefers.
Got it. Thank you very much. Next question was, I guess this is more of a, OHSA question, but I'll ask you, can roll or chop block be used from a youth football level? What are your thoughts?
I guess, can it or should it?
It says can.
Can. So at the high school level where we play, you are allowed to cut block. It has to be on the initial movement. There is a rule where, once the ball leaves the free blocking zone, there is no free blocking zone. You would probably have to go, when you're talking about youth football, to either your league rule book, right, or whatever organization, right, is that controls that aspect of what's going on with football at your level. Maybe you guys use the NFHS rule books like high school does. If you do, then you've got that rule about where the ball is, and if the ball's in the free blocking zone, you can cut. If it's not, you can't. So I would do some research as to what are the actual rules specific to your league.
Got it. Okay. Next question was, at the youth level, would you suggest skilled players play offensive line?
Oh, yeah. So I think you can you see my picture right now?
No.
I screwed something up here.
That's all right. You unshare it.
Yeah. Stop sharing. So I just think it's kind of awkward to not be able to see the person you're talking to. There we go. Oh, maybe, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, so read me that question again.
Should offensive linemen or should skill players play offensive line at the youth level?
Yeah, good question. So you run into this problem at the youth level a lot, I know, where, right, you only have so many guys, right? And so what if you have a team of 20 guys, right? You got to play 11 at a time, and you only have 3 true offensive linemen, right? So how do you approach that? I mean, you got to have 5 of them, right? So sometimes You may have to have some guys play offensive line that aren't going to play offensive line at the high school level. And I think if you're in that situation, you use that as a great teaching tool. You know, one of the great things about this sport, the sport of football, is it provides so many opportunities to teach our young people lessons about how to approach life, right? How to approach problems and adversity and how to approach being uncomfortable, right? And having to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. All right. And so, I mean, that's how I would approach it. I would say also, so maybe another situation that you may have would be, so let's say you have a couple bigger bodied guys that are probably going to be offensive linemen, but they're not great now, right? They're not great offensive linemen now, right? And you have some, smaller, more athletic guys that are definitely not going to grow into offensive linemen at the high school level. I mean, there'll be a time where they're not going to be able to stand in there. But they're better now at the youth level, right? Because they're in better shape. They're a little bit stronger than the big guys that spend a lot of time on the couch, like all those things, right? So if that's what you're talking about with that question is, do you play the big guy who's going to be an offensive lineman, who's maybe not as good, or do you play the skill guy or the big skill guy, the linebacker type of guy that's not going to be an offensive lineman at the high school level, but is a better player now? I think you develop your offensive lineman. I think if you're coaching youth football to win your league championship, right? I think you're doing, and not that winning's bad, right? There's nothing wrong with teaching your kids the importance of winning, right? That's a good thing, right? But number one should be developing your guys for the high school program. And so I would play those bigger guys.
Got it. Next question. What is the easiest scheme to teach at the middle school level, in your personal opinion?
Yeah, so big proponent of gap schemes. All right. It gives your guys angles to work with, right? It gets an extra hat at the point of attack, right? There are things that, as you get further along in the world of football that teams can do to try to combat some of the advantages that gap schemes give you. But a lot of times at the youth level or middle school level, right, some of those adjustments aren't going to be made. So I think gap scheme, your traditional power scheme with the fullback picking out and pulling the backside guard, everybody's blocking down on the front side. I think that's a great scheme to start with. It's good against everything, and yeah, like I said, it provides your guys with angles to work with.
Awesome. When you're picking offensive linemen, say you have 5 offensive linemen, what do you look for in your center?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think for us, our center, he has to be athletic, right? So if you just take a look at, okay, so if you're going to run some gap scheme, right? So you're going to see some even front, right? And so you're probably gonna want to run some of the gap scheme at the bubble or the 1-5 look. All right. Well, that means your center's got to block back on a 3 technique, right? And that's probably one of the toughest blocks in offensive line play, is your center having to block back on a 3, especially if he's a really good player. All right. So he's got to be very athletic, right? He's got to have some twitch to him, right? But you're probably also going to play some on front, right? And they're going to take their biggest, squattiest, strongest defensive lineman and put him right on your center's nose, right? So he's going to have some mass to him, all right? Between those two things, right? If you're saying, well, I wish I had 5 of those guys, athletic and strong, and massive guys. Yeah, that it's easy. You just pick one and put them at center, right? But so if you're having to make a decision, right? Do I go with the bigger guy or do I go with the more athletic guy? We would go with the more athletic guy first.
Got it. Awesome. This is a good question here. So offensive lineman it's not the funnest job from a youth level standpoint. So how do you keep your offensive lineman motivated to love what they do from an offensive line standpoint?
Yeah, I think that comes from how you approach your entire program, right? What do you value as a football team, right? Do you value touchdowns, right? And do you value guys that score touchdowns? Or do you value guys that are doing the dirty work? Do you value effort guys, right? Are you obsessed with talent? Are you obsessed with the kid that you know, every time you guys run wind sprints at the end of practice, he beats everybody because he was blessed by God, right? Is that your MVP after every game, and that kid gets all the game balls, right? So I mean, I think that comes from how you run your program. It can't just be words; it's got to be actions, right? You have to back those things up with how you treat your guys. But if you value everybody on your team, no matter what position that they play or how good they are, and you place a premium on effort, right? I think your kids will respond to that type of leadership. And if your number one thing that you value in your football program is effort, then you're gonna have kids fighting to be on the offensive line.
Awesome. Great perspective on that. The last question that I have, unless we have someone else send us one, do you coach your tight ends differently than your traditional offensive lineman?
Yeah. So yeah, the tight ends there's gonna be different things about the tight ends than the offensive line, and probably maybe a better way to say that is there are things that your offensive line is going to have to know and be able to do that the tight end is not going to have to be able to do, right? So really, it would be like being able to get really, really specific with that one guy, right? And so what are you doing with that other time? Well, you're working on the things that he does and an offensive line doesn't do, which is, get a chance to score a touchdown. I think, but I would say this: if you only have 4 guys on your staff, right, and you don't have a guy to just coach the tight ends, right, you can still do a good job. You can put those guys with your offensive line when you're working run game and coach them up. You can put them with your receiver coach while you're working the pass game and coach them up like that. I mean, you can definitely do that. You can split them. But if you do have the size of a coaching set to get specific with those guys, it can be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have no additional questions at this time, but do you have any last parting words or advice for youth football coaches, specifically to the offensive line or in general?
Yeah, the offensive line, it's the greatest position in football, right? And football is the greatest sport in the world. All right, so you guys are lucky, right? You get to coach the biggest, baddest sons of guns out there, every Saturday afternoon, and I hope you guys love it. It's been an honor to be here talking with you guys. I appreciate Daryl and everything that he does for all the high school, youth, junior high coaches in Northeast Ohio, and all the support that we get from the Cleveland Browns. So go Brownies and go Tigers. Thanks everybody.
All right. Thank you very much, Coach. It's been a pleasure of mine and ours. Good luck this season, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right.